Hey guys, tonight we step quietly into the early morning haze of a Zulu village, the air still cool and faintly damp from the night's mist. You hear the muffled clinking of metal basins being carried out from round thatched huts, and smell the earthy temps of damp clay mixed with the faint smoke of last night's cooking fire. Chickens wander between feet, making it clear that they have zero respect for laundry day boundaries. You probably won't survive this, at least not if you're allergic to waking up before the sun does. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, tell me in the comments where you are right now, and what time it is where you are. I love imagining all of us together, scattered across time zones, meeting here in this one quiet moment. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across packed earth still marked with the footprints of last night's dancers. Following the gentle swish of skirts ahead, women are already gathered near the stream, their skirts tucked up just high enough to keep them dry, their chatter blending with the steady burble of water over stones. The mainstream fact: in 19th century Zulu life, communal washing was both a chore and a social anchor, often done at rivers or communal wells. The fringe detail: some women would place certain herbs in the rinse water not for fragrance, but because they believed it discouraged snakes from slipping too close. Historians still argue whether that was practical pest control or simply tradition passed down through cautionary tales. You kneel beside a wooden tub that has clearly seen better decades, watching a neighbor work soap made from animal fat into the fabric, the suds catching the morning light like small clouds. She laughs at something you can't quite hear, her hands never stopping their rhythmic scrub against the washboard stone. You notice how no one is in a hurry. This is as much about catching up on village news as it is about removing yesterday's dust. In a world without instant messaging, this is the group chat, the forum, and the neighborhood watch all rolled into one. You dip your own hands into the water, feeling its surprising chill seep into your bones, and begin rubbing the woven cotton against the rough stone. The texture pulls faint threads loose, and for a moment you think about how much faster a washing machine would do this. Then remember, you're here to slow down. The sun is climbing now, spilling pale gold light across the grasslands beyond the village. You shift your position on the riverbank, your legs starting to feel the uneven stones beneath you. Around you, voices weave in and out, sometimes soft as secrets, sometimes bright as a burst of shared laughter. There's a rhythm to it, not unlike the washing itself. Dip, scrub, rinse, wring. The mainstream fact here is that Zulu laundry was usually done by hand, using a combination of river, water, ash, and lye soap. The ash came from burned hardwood, prized because it created a more alkaline wash water, lifting dirt from heavy fabric more effectively. The fringe detail, whispered from one generation to the next, was that if you washed clothes in certain spots along the river, the spirits of ancestors might bless the wearer with protection. Historians still argue whether this belief had any formal ritual structure, or whether it was simply an affectionate superstition tied to familiar landmarks. A young girl beside you is struggling with a particularly stubborn stain on what looks like a ceremonial wrap. She pauses, glances around, and then dunks it directly into the deeper current, letting the river do the work. Her grandmother catches her eye, tilts her head, and without a word, both smile, half guilty, half proud. You can't help but smirk at the little rebellion. The air smells sharper now, a mix of wet stone, soap, and the faint metallic temps of the river itself. Overhead, a pair of weaver birds chatter noisily, as if deeply invested in the soap-to-water ratio. A few boys dart past, carrying carved wooden pails filled with more water for those who've claimed spots farther from the bank. They pretend to complain about the wait, but you can see the satisfaction in their faces. Laundry day might not be glamorous, but it's a break from herding goats. As you work, the repetitive motion starts to lull you, your breathing falling into the same pace. As you're scrubbing, your arms ache a little, but there's a strange contentment in seeing the fabric brighten under your fingers. The older women keep an unspoken watch on the younger ones, correcting their wringing technique with small, efficient gestures. You imagine they've done this so many times their hands could do it in the dark, and maybe they have. Every so often, someone lifts their head to scan the horizon, not out of paranoia, but habit, keeping an eye out for approaching travelers, wandering livestock, or just a change in light that means the day is getting ahead of them. The river gurgles along, completely unconcerned with time, and you realize that in this small, foamy corner of the world, the urgency of the modern clock doesn't exist. Some fabrics are beaten gently against smooth stones, others twisted and wrung until water streams out in little silver arcs. You find yourself fixating on how water catches light, those brief, sharp flashes before droplets disappear back into the dirt. A child laughs somewhere behind you, chasing a soap bubble that's somehow escaped the work zone entirely. By the time your pile is half cleaned, you've memorized the rhythm, the dip that soaks the cloth through, the slow rub to coax dirt away, the twist that leaves your hands faintly wrinkled and smelling of ash soap. It's ordinary, it's tedious, and somehow it's exactly the kind of moment you'll remember long after the shift your weight on the bank again, feeling the ground give just slightly beneath your heels. Soft, damp soil pressed into memory by the hundreds of feet that have stood here on laundry days past. The soundscape has settled into something almost hypnotic now. The slosh of water, the slap of wet cloth on stone, the quiet huff of someone wringing out a stubborn shirt. It's not silent, never silent, but the noise is layered and low, a kind of communal white noise that could almost lull you to sleep if you weren't part of the work. The mainstream historical fact here is that in many Zulu villages during the 19th and early 20th centuries, Laundry Day wasn't just about cleanliness, it was an unspoken social event. Women exchanged news, resolved disputes, and even negotiated marriage introductions. Right here, by the river, the quirky detail. Some believed that if you accidentally dropped a freshly washed garment into the current and it floated away, it meant someone in the wearer's life would soon travel far from the village. Historians still argue whether that was a superstition with deeper roots in Zulu migration history or just a practical excuse for why someone's shirt ended up halfway to the next settlement. One of the older women near you is telling a story about a cousin who lost 3 dresses to the river in one afternoon. The group around her laughs, knowingly. 3 dresses lost, 3 relatives gone within a season. Whether that's coincidence or fate is left hanging in the warm air. Children keep weaving in and out of the scene, their bare feet kicking up bits of grass as they ferry smaller loads to and from the bank. A boy stops to poke at a frog hiding under a stone. The frog, looking entirely unimpressed, flicks into the water without ceremony. The boy grins and goes back to carrying a dripping armful of shirts, leaving small wet circles on the ground behind him. You notice a young woman taking extra care with a brilliantly patterned wrap. The reds and yellows pulse even brighter now that the morning sun is hitting the damp fabric. She pauses, smoothing it carefully between her palms as if imprinting her attention into the fibers. Maybe it's for a ceremony, maybe it's just her favorite piece. In this space, small rituals feel as important as grand ones. Every so often, there's a sudden burst of conversations, someone sharing news of a hunt, a visiting trader, or the latest gossip about who might be seen walking together after sundown. The topics twist and change without warning, like the currents at the river's bend. You catch pieces here and there, the kind of fragments that are meaningless alone, but form the real glue of community life when taken together. The sun is higher now. The light sharper. You feel warmth gathering on the back of your neck, while the air rising from the river still carries a coolness that sticks to your damp hands. Somewhere down the bank, 2 women start a soft song, low harmonies, steady and unhurried. No one announces it. It just begins, weaving through the sound of water, until a few others join in. The song doesn't rush, its content to stretch and meander like the river itself. When you pause to stretch your fingers, you realize how the work has crept into your muscles. They're warm now, a little sore, but in that satisfying way that tells you something has been done and done well. A woman nearby lifts a finished sheet, heavy and dripping, and hands it to her daughter, who hauls it toward the drying racks, just rough-hewn poles set in the ground, ready to catch the wind. In that moment, you can feel the quiet symmetry of it, the river giving up its water, the sun lending its heat, and the people binding those elements together with their hands and time. It's not efficient in the modern sense, but it works. It always has. And maybe, just maybe, that's the point. You pause for a moment under the shade of an acacia tree, letting the slight breeze tug at the edge of your skirt or trousers, whichever feels most comfortable in this oddly specific historical daydream. The air carries that faint, mineral scent of sun-warmed river stones, mixed with the sharper temps of freshly soaked soap root, not the perfumed foamy lather you'd expect from your modern laundry detergent commercials. This is earthier, a little slippery in your hands, and slightly bitter on your tongue if you're careless enough to taste it, which of course you are. Around you. The rhythm of the village continues without urgency. A few older women sit on low stools, gossiping in low tones, their hands busy pounding clothes with smooth wooden paddles against flat rocks. The thuds have their own tempo, matched only by the occasional splash as water arcs from fabric back into the shallows. You join in, lifting a garment heavy with water, wringing it until your forearms feel a slow, steady ache. Historians still argue whether this method, alternating pounding with wringing, was purely practical or also carried a kind of ritual significance, a nod to the cyclical nature of cleansing and renewal. Every so often, someone breaks into a quiet hum, no melody you recognize, just a gentle rise and fall that threads through the air like the breeze itself. Mainstream historical accounts describe Zulu laundry as purely a domestic chore, but oral histories sometimes frame it as a communal gathering, where stories, matchmaking hints, and subtle politics passed just as freely as water between hands. One quirky tidbit that slips into your mind: in certain seasons, bright river sand was sprinkled onto stubborn stains before scrubbing, the grains acting like a natural scouring powder. And if you're wondering whether this method scratched delicate fabrics, well, let's just say delicate fabrics weren't exactly in high supply here. The sun sits higher now, glaring down on the water until you can't quite tell where the sky ends and the reflection begins. Your bare feet dig into the cool mud at the riverbank's edge, toes curling instinctively each time the current laps over them. Across the way, a boy herds a small cluster of goats toward the grazing slopes, their bleats carrying faintly. You suspect at least one of them is eyeing your freshly washed cloth in a suspiciously opportunistic way. There's a comfort in the repetition: lift, twist, rinse, beat, fold over the line that numbs you into an almost meditative state. You catch yourself thinking about how the world feels smaller here, defined not by borders and politics, but by the length of a clothesline, the bend of a river, and the soft slap of fabric against stone. And yet, in the background, life's larger rhythms still play out: harvest cycles, clan gatherings, the occasional whispered mention of distant markets, where cloth in strange colors and patterns appears from places far beyond the horizon. Someone laughs a quick, light burst, and you realize a child has managed to dump half a gourd of rinse water onto your lap. It's cool against the heat of the day, and you can't bring yourself to scold. After all, what's one more rinse in the grand scheme of laundry day? Besides, there's always more water, more sunshine, and more stories waiting just downstream. Wring one last cloth, the muscles in your hands now steady with the rhythm, and hang it to dry beside a row of fluttering shirts that dance lazily in the breeze. The smell of sun-baked cotton and grass begins to take over from the soaproot's sharper scent. Somewhere behind you, someone starts telling a story about a cow that wandered off and returned wearing a woven grass necklace. And you think, this is exactly how time passes here, slowly, evenly, without hurry or alarm, as if the river itself insists that life can be scrubbed clean and hung in the wind until it's ready to be worn again. By the time you drift away from the riverbank, the first few pieces of laundry are already drying, their colors shifting subtly in the sun. The deep indigos seem to breathe out their damp darkness, the reds mellow to something closer to brick, and the off-whites never truly white soften into the pale beige of river foam. You carry a woven basket on your hip, its rim pressing into your side in that oddly satisfying way that tells you it's well made and well-used. Your path back to the homestead winds between thorn bushes and patches of tall grass, which rustle like polite applause when you brush past. The basket sways in rhythm with your steps, releasing the warm, clean scent of wet fabric mixed with the faint, peppery smell of the soaproot. Historians still argue whether Zulu women carried laundry home purely for drying, or if part of the task included a final inspection indoors, away from the dust and wandering livestock. Either way, you like the idea of an extra stage, an unhurried final act before a chore becomes memory. Ahead, you spot a cluster of women sitting in the shade of a broad-branched marula tree, their mending clothes as they talk, their needles flashing briefly in the sunlight. The conversation drifts in and out of your hearing, a remark about the changing weather, a chuckle over a young man who tripped during last week's dance, And more quietly a mention of a neighboring village that's hosting a wedding soon. You know, without asking, that laundry day is never just about the laundry. It's an exchange of updates, favors, and those little under-the-breath opinions that never quite make it to public gatherings. One quirky bit you've overheard from elders before: in some households, the best washed garment of the day would be quietly admired by everyone who passed, as though its brightness or smoothness was a reflection of the washer's personal skill. It wasn't a formal competition, but you imagine a few extra minutes of scrubbing might go into certain pieces, especially if a suitor might notice them fluttering on the line later. As you set the basket down, a child wanders over, tugging on the hem of your sleeve to ask if you've seen their missing cloth doll. You shake your head, but the thought sticks with you. Somewhere, tucked behind a pot or wedged under a bench, that small bundle of scraps is waiting to be rediscovered. Smelling faintly of earth and river, the sun feels heavier now, as if it's leaning closer. A few chickens scratch in the dust nearby, their occasional clucks blending with the distant, steady thump of someone still working at the river. You think about how, in your modern life, a washing machine would have ended this entire process in under an hour. Yet here, the time cost is part of the point: the slow, deliberate movement from river to home, the pauses to talk, the way everyone can see the work happening in the open air. You pluck a shirt from the basket, give it a quick shake, and pin it to a rough wooden pole propped between two branches. The wind catches it instantly, lifting one sleeve as if waving to someone far away. Maybe, you think, it's waving to tomorrow's you, who will take it down, fold it neatly, and put it away without quite realizing how much sun and story it has soaked up today.